Half a dozen enforcers dead! Enforcers dead!
Yeah.
A building blown to pieces!
No!
So I recently completed making these goggles used by the character Jinx in the popular show Arcane. They were a lot of fun to make, and I thought I'd show how I made them. First, I thought I might as well start off with why I made them. So why did I want to make these? There's a few reasons, I guess. The first one is that I absolutely love the aesthetic of the show Arcane. The kind of steampunk, but like futuristic, but not. Something about it was very, very cool to me. And when I saw these goggles in a scene, it was kind of like the perfect thing that I could try to make. It would be challenging enough. I didn't want to make anything huge. I know a lot of people do cosplay props of Jinx's, like the bigger guns that she has. I've seen someone do a very, very good job at the grenades that she throws out, but I haven't seen anyone do the goggles, so I want to try that. It's also something that as soon as I saw, I kind of started to have ideas in my head of how they would be made. The thing that caught my attention about these goggles was the little slit that's in the middle of them. Never seen it before on goggles, but it's kind of a good idea. Usually the actual goggles are very, very dark. These ones with the little slit, and you can kind of see her in the beginning of the scene that she uses them in. You can see sparks coming out like she is welding something. They're very, very smart in that sense, because you could look down through the bottom of them where it's darker and not have the light affect your eyes. But then when you want to actually look at the piece, you hold it up, and she does that in a scene and just adjust them a little bit. And that was a cool idea to me, and I haven't seen that before.
Look, this is a weird way to start the tutorial, I understand. Everything you're seeing right now did not end up in the finished product, but I like the process of it, and I think it was interesting, so I just decided to quickly show it, I guess. I want to make that outside ring frame area, and the way I was going to do that is using Delft clay.
Look at that. Baby powder helps it not stick to the mold that we put in there. Probably a little more than I needed, not gonna lie. That's okay.
Basically, this is the process of sandcasting. It's pouring metal in between a negative of a mold to get the finished result.
Feels like that game Operation.
Now, I mostly want to show this for two reasons. One, I do like the process of it. Two, it took me quite a while to do. Unfortunately, it wasn't at all what I needed to do, and it wasn't going to work.
Although I'm not showing the rest, this is about as far as I got with it. You'll see the first outer ring that I made. This is what became of that casted piece. I made this middle piece to connect the two out of titanium. This part is those little wires that you see on the sides, or so it was supposed to be, and I greatly underestimated how impractical it was to do it this way. Not only was it much more difficult with this material, but I would never be able to get it as close to the actual model as I wanted it to be. So I changed the way I wanted to do it.
So it turns out not as much of a blacksmith as I thought it was. Luckily, I do have a 3D printer. It uses resin and UV light to build pieces based on 3D models.
These are the goggles that I ended up designing. I used Autodesk Fusion 360 for this. There's a free version of it. And I basically just went through off of a bunch of reference photos and did the best I could to recreate it. I also made it in different parts, as you can see, that it can be printed and put together separately, and I can paint it all separately. I did find one online, but it wasn't quite what I wanted it to look like because it didn't really match the reference photos that I had. So through a bunch more work, I ended up designing it myself, and I'm pretty happy with it turned out. So all that's left to do was to print it.
Yeah, it may not be as cool as pouring molten metal into sand, but look at that. That was about 5 hours of printing, and I am very happy with the way they turned out. Luckily, my design was also pretty good, so I got a lot of great detail on it. You can see one of the things I like better about a resin printer is just the high level of detail between the wires and the knurling or the hinges. It turned out really well. Once the printing is done, you will have to clip off all the supports. It's pretty straightforward. You just kind of try to do as best a job as you can to keep it clean, and then it's later send it off to flatten it out. I ended up with a few different pieces. This is the main frame piece, which I actually printed in the wrong size, so I ended up reprinting it. Regardless, I also printed these side pieces, very traditional of a welding or cutting style goggle. They're supposed to protect light and debris from going into the side of them. The weakest part was obviously the middle part, and I really don't want these to break. I put a little strip of titanium on there. Don't ask me why I have titanium. I don't really know why I have titanium. But I had a sheet of it, so I cut off a little strip and then epoxied it. But from the front, it's pretty invisible, and then it just hides along the back and it connects the two thicker parts and goes across that middle there. Let's talk about challenging things when you're making things you never have before, such as how to cut a slot in a glass lens. Now, I don't work with glass very much, and I broke a few pieces doing this, but it finally worked out, and this is with a 3D printed little holder that I made for that glass lens. I was feeling pretty good about myself right now. I came up with this idea and it turned out better than I had imagined. I realized somewhere along the lines that the rotary tool can't go any further than the openings of where it hits the resin, because if you see the bit, it's not sanding the entire way through. I was super happy with how this turned out. Like I said, so happy to try new challenges, and this is very rewarding to see something that was an idea actually pay off. Keeping on the idea of new techniques I've never done before, I am bending a brass rod to make these outer rings for the goggles. Using a torch and slowly bending it around a cylinder, I'm able to make these little coil shape. Now, I got this idea from jewelry making where you make that coil shape and then you cut it apart and you are left off with these nice little, ideally almost perfect circles. All that's left to do is to heat it up and press it in a vise to kind of get it the right shape. Once you heat it up and let it cool down, it kind of stays shaped, and that's what I was hoping for. Something like this in the end is what I was shooting for. All I had to do left was solder that joint so it would stay together. If you know how to solder, please turn off the screen right now. I don't know how to solder. I didn't need to be pretty though. I just wanted it to stick together. Because after that, I can clean it up with a belt sander, or I should say belt grinder. While I got the belt grinder out, I need to flatten one side that will sit against the goggles and also create the bevel that sits on the outside. Look, I'm not recommending this technique, but I don't own a lathe. I do own a super old drill press that's basically broken anyways. I found out if I turn it on my side, I got myself a nice little lathe. That little spindle in the middle I just made out of a piece of wood, and I can glue on the brass ring with some super glue and some activator, which saves so much drying time. Once it's on there, I use a rotary tool just to clean up and create that inside bevel, since I wouldn't have been able to do that with the belt grinder. Lastly, all I gotta do after going through some sandpaper grits is to polish it off to get as close to a mirror finish as I could, and again, very, very happy with how this turned out. I want to give full credit to this painting technique to this channel that I found, I guess Robert Führer, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Anyways, I want to recreate that brass kind of aged bronze look, and this was exactly what I was looking for, and it was super helpful. So what this painting technique involved was to put a black base coat, matte black to be specific, on all the parts. Those little side pieces are going to stay black, so I just painted them black, and then the other two are going to get a bit further treatment to get that brassish color. Once the pieces have dried from the spray painting, you can go ahead and do the second part of this painting process. Basically, it's this copper colored paint that you rub very finely between your two fingers, and then rub all over the piece that had that matte black finish on it. What you're left off with is this very nice kind of aged brass, maybe bronzish look, and it's very, very close to what the reference photo showed, and I was super happy with the way these turned out. This is that main body piece, and you can just see the really good definition because the finger can't kind of reach all those crevices. It adds a really good depth between the higher spots and the lower areas between those wires and the little knurling. Very, very good technique, and once again, full credit to that YouTube channel I found describing it. After a little bit of thought and a strange amount of research, I figured the best thing for putting the lenses into the main body would be a two-part epoxy. Pretty much you squeeze out the tube in equal amounts, and then you mix it for about 30 seconds or so, just enough to get it to all mixed together. After that, I'm applying it super thin on this inside ridge of the lens. I scraped away the paint just for better adhesion to the glass. and then you can see it just drops in. Also, because of the 3D printer, they all fit very, very well, and I was happy about that. Using clothesline hangers, because I don't have spring clips, they worked out very well. This is that main piece that holds the slotted lens. It also has a hinge on top. So one of the concerns of mine was how I was going to get that hinge to be perfectly at the top and perfectly perpendicular to that slot. I ended up printing out this template using the 3D model actually, so that way I knew as long as I lined up the hinge and the clip at the bottom with the indents in the outer circle there, and lined up the lens with the middle, it's pretty much perfect, and a super simple solution to something that I thought was going to be a much bigger problem, and it turned out very well. This part's more aesthetics over anything else. Basically, this lens that sits behind that slotted one, originally they came clear. I got them off of a different pair of kind of steampunk goggles, and I didn't want to be able to see through that slot and see the eye of whoever's wearing it. I think it kind of takes away from the look. So another little solution that I came up with was to use this mirroring film. The application's pretty close to like tinting a window, if anyone knows what that's like. Basically, peel, stick, make sure it's clean, and once you put it behind it, you can't see through it one way. It's pretty much a double-sided mirror. So if you hold it up that way, you can't see it, but to the user, there's my face, you can see through it and see what you're working on. Because one of the traits of 3D printing resin is not that it's soft, I had to make something that would press against the face of whoever was wearing it, so that way it would at least be bearable. I ended up going with this little piece of leather. This is contact cement, pretty much applied to two things, stick them together after it dries, and they stay very well. I use this to roll the edge over. I guess you could sew it too, but I don't really have the equipment to sew leather, so I just rolled it over. It stayed together very well. All I had to do was put it inside that little outer ring that I showed earlier. So you see that rib there is what's going to press against the face of whoever's wearing it. I apologize for the bad camera angle on this, but hopefully you can kind of understand what's going on. By gluing this piece of leather with the rolled edge to the inside of that outer piece that we 3D printed, it allows a much more comfortable fit to the face. Also, as a practical sense, it will prevent dust and whatnot from entering the goggles due to the fitting of it.
So these are the little supports I made for the strap. They're not polished in the show, but I kind of like the way they look, and you know, I'm making them, I guess. So it's basically just taken from that round thing, like a round rod of brass, and then I shaped it down, flatten it, punch out that hole, or sorry, drill out one that's a little bit bigger. They both got one for the bottom and one for the top. So I think these are both, no, those are two different pieces. Then I just polished them up. There's still little marks on them, but I'm gonna keep them because it kind of adds to the look. I'm just gonna clear coat them so they don't tarnish, but other than that, these are done.
After what seemed like an eternity, you have all of your pieces. Actually not too complicated. You got the main body and side protectors, those glass lenses with the brass rings, bunch of hardware to put it together, so the strap holders that I just showed, and a strap which I sourced from cheaper goggles. One of the parts of this project that I am quite proud of how it came out is how simple it is to put together. Basically, I'm just using little hardware, so some nuts and bolts that go through those hinges, and then the bottom piece clips on. The little side holders for the strap. Now I say proud because even with the reference photos, there's still many ways I could have gone about making this. Overall, I'm very glad with how they came out, and I think from a practical sense, in relation to the show and how they would be made, I think it's very close. Once you get those side strap holders on, I just put a dowel with a screw between them so that strap can loop around it. And that's all it takes. I am very thrilled with how these came out. Really blown away. I just could not be happier. I think they look so good.
So despite everything going completely wrong most of the time throughout this project, it was actually a very fun challenge in the end. I don't make stuff for the final product, I make them for the experience along the way, and I love finding new ways to make stuff, and I love kind of overcoming problems while making things like this is a very good example of something that I love to make. Overall, it was a lot of fun to make, and I don't want to do it again. Anyways, here they are. Look at that. The finished product. They look pretty good in my opinion. There are things that are a little different from the show. The little brackets up top are not the exact same. They might be a little wider than the show. Obviously it's not, I would assume it's not plastic in the middle of the show, but it's, you know, same idea. In the show, or I guess in reality, this probably would have been a leather strap. I just think it would have fit the aesthetic and everything more. It's just not very practical for someone that wants to wear it. So I chose on purpose not to go with that. I could have made one. Didn't really feel the need to. This has been quite a long journey, I won't lie. Just between being busy and finding time to work on these, it's been a while. And I have been keeping my Twitch a little bit updated. So during live streams, I have talked about it from time to time. And should I have any further projects, I will be talking about that. So I'm going to leave a link in the description below to my Twitch if you want to check it out. Also, if you have any questions, and I am live on Twitch, you can ask me on there. Other than that, if you have any questions or constructive criticism even, you can put them in the comments below and I will be more than happy to address them. Like I said, I love learning about stuff and finding new processes, and I'm so glad I got the chance to make these, and I will be never doing it again. Like I said, the little glass lenses got a little bit chipped, but it's not a huge deal. Other than that, the strap, pretty happy with it. I'm gonna make little leather things to hold it down. Glass is okay. Bottom, nice, beautiful. There you go. I might as well wear them once, because why not? I'm actually gonna put them on my head, but yeah, they're pretty cool.